Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. Right now, as I make this video on Sunday, September the 29th of 2019, there is an election going on right now in Austria. It is not a normal election, a normally scheduled election after a term ended, because people who are keeping up with politics or who have been subscribed to my channel for a little longer, they still remember that in 2017 there was the last regular election that resulted in the Kahlenberg coalition between the centrist party ÖVP, the Österreichische Volkspartei, literally translated the People's Party of Austria, and the Austrian Freedom Party, FPÖ. Most of you might have heard why this coalition broke apart this year. It was the notorious Ibiza video scandal that ended the most popular coalition in Austria since the middle of the 20th century. Now in this video today I want to revisit first why Austria is so important and what was so special about the Kahlenberg coalition that formed in 2017. I then want to go over the Ibiza scandal and why the coalition broke apart, and then I want to tell you about how it stands, what the polls say, and what the possible outcomes of today's election are. Also, of course, the title of my thumbnail and of the video are Betrayal in Austria, and I want to clarify what kinds of betrayals I mean. It is probably not what you think it is, and it is more than one kind of betrayal. So let's revisit now 2017 and the Kahlenberg coalition. Why is Austria so important? So I said back then in my second video that the new Austria would change Europe. And I'm not the first person to say that Austria can be seen as some kind of an experimental laboratory for things that you want to try out on a small scale before you roll them out on a larger scale like in Germany or in Europe. And at that time, Austria was coming from a grand coalition between the Social Democrats and the centrists, just like we have that in Germany. The Kack Party and the Social Democrat Party. That is Angela Merkel's coalition. Then 2015 happened, the opening of the borders happened, and public opinion turned to the right. At that moment, Sebastian Kurz usurped the Kack Party and formed a coalition not with the Social Democrats, but actually with the more right-wing, more nationalist, more patriotic Freedom Party of Austria. Of course, at that moment, many people in Germany, including myself, looked towards Austria with a great deal of hope and optimism, because it could show us the way how to overcome this deadlock situation where nothing in society gets done, because the two large boomer parties that mainly have old voters now just block everything and totally ignore the justified concerns of working people and the young people. In my video, I went over the coalition contract, and there were a lot of things that people in Germany would actually welcome. Increased border patrols and less welfare for illegal migrants, for example. And also the need to deport people again who clearly don't belong here. It is clear, however, that Sebastian Kurz is not one of our guys, so to speak. He is a power-hungry, ambitious young politician, and he is, of course, in contact with George Soros. He is on the European Council for Foreign Relations, for example. He was seen, and I think rightfully so, as an opportunist who saw that the time is right to make a move right now. And we don't know actually if he is involved with these shady characters for his own personal gain because he wants to get ahead fast, or because he is a humble servant of the Dark Lord. Be that as it may, we all knew that the parts of the coalition contract that were to the liking of the political right were actually put in there not because he wanted that, but because Mr. Strache and his Freedom Party wanted this. So that was the situation by the end of 2017, and the new coalition worked reasonably well. Of course, this is not the view that you get when you just read mainstream media and state media sources. The deep state and the established corporate and state media tried all the time to involve this coalition into pseudo-scandals, pretty much like what happens in the USA. Just imagine Rachel Maddow and all these lunatics talking about Russian conspiracies and foreign influence and collusion and all that stuff just in Europe. The situation was that Sebastian Kurz was attacked by the leftist media all the time, that the FPÖ is a right-winged evil party and how can he be in a coalition with these outrageous people. So it felt like that every week he has to apologize for them. And of course he wants to be seen as Mr. Clean, who is also accepted by the mainstream. So he actually has to make his peace with extreme leftists. So I don't know if he actually just wanted to end the coalition and who ordered this Ibiza video. I have no idea. It could be a foreign secret service. It could be a group of political activists. It could be a foreign government. It could be anything. Some people say that the Zentrum für politische Schönheit, a German ensemble of quote-unquote artists, basically leftist, communist, political activists, has something to do with that, but of course they all deny that. So the summary of the Ibiza scandal is very simple. There was a woman that posed as the niece of a rich Russian oligarch, and she offered to donate a considerable sum of money to the Freedom Party, or they discussed then also to buy a Austrian newspaper that could push them, the Freedom Party, in the Austrian media in order to increase their voter turnout. Now all this happened in a private villa on the island of Ibiza, and it was filmed all in secret. Strache and Gudenos did not know that they are filmed, and they actually thought that this woman is not an actress or a secret agent or what have you, but actually the niece of a Russian oligarch. Mr. Strache had a couple of drinks and he said some stupid stuff that made him sound like a very corrupt person actually. You can actually read about it on Wikipedia or read any newspaper article in English or German about the content of the whole video, but to me it actually seems that he more or less said he wants to have what all the other established politicians had for decades, and that is influence on the industry and on the media, of course. In other words, he wants to have the power to put his own men into the deep state, just like the other side did for decades. And I'm sure if there was some privately, illegally filmed video of Angela Merkel or of Bill Clinton or whoever, it would probably be much more outrageous than what Strache said that day. And believe me, if that ever happened, nobody would call for their resignation or actually discuss the content of the video, but everyone would be talking about the criminal energy and the people behind the production of the video. People would be going after the people who made the video, and they would be treated as very, very bad criminals. But now we see the opposite. Nobody talks about who made the video. To my knowledge, there is not even a big investigation or a great effort being made to expose those people. No, we know actually who knows about these people. It was the notorious Spiegel and the Süddeutsche Zeitung, two extremely leftist news sources, and the state comedian Angela Merkel's private jester Jan Böhmermann, who also knew beforehand about the content and the existence of the video. He doesn't deny that. He openly admits that he was approached. People asked him if he wants this video in order to use it on his show, and he declined. So there are people who know who's behind it, but no one wants to use the same methods used in the production of the video in order to find out who was behind the video. And once again, if the other side of the political spectrum were the victim of such a secretly, illegally obtained video, it would be just the other way around. As a consequence of this video, Strache had to step back, and Kurz then also ended the coalition. This is all in the past. There is not a really big reason to complain about that now. It's in the past. I just wanted to give you the context. And some people say now that this was the big betrayal of Sebastian Kurz, that he should have kept the coalition going and said, well, this video was just illegally obtained and that was just talk in private, and this should not affect our collaboration. The people voted for these parties. They gave us their trust, and we have a clear mission for Austria and for Europe, and this is what we want to do. But then again, I said Kurz was never our guy, so he was never on the right. He was never fully behind these things. So when Mr. Bystron from the AfD called Kurz a traitor for that, I will have to say, well, he was never our guy, so how can you call him a traitor? Kurz is a person without principles, and just like Angela Merkel, nobody really knows where they really stand. So some people on the right say that Kurz is a traitor and the ÖVP betrayed the Kahlenberg coalition, but you know, they were never on the right. There are people who are in bed with Soros, so what do you expect? To me, this is not betrayal. To me, this is just who they are. So in order to be a traitor, in order to commit treason, you first of all have to be a trusted partner, or at least in the same camp as somebody that you can betray. And the actual betrayal that I want to talk about is the betrayal on the right in Austria. And the same goes on in Germany, by the way, in the context of the AfD. Of course, I said that a lot of times, and I stand by this, there must be a broad spectrum of people on the right in these parties. There must be people who are more libertarian, more conservative, more patriotic, and some of them can be a little more right-winged or socialist. That is all okay as long as they have something that binds them together, that unites them in that party. And that would be, at the moment, of course, the struggle for the future of European people. We do not want to be replaced in the countries that are the only homes we have on this planet. Our ancestors have been living here for thousands of years, and now non-European globalists have turned our cities and many districts even into places that we don't recognize anymore within a couple of decades. This has to be stopped, this has to be reverted, and we have to fight for our future on this continent, on our continent. If we disagree a little bit on questions of taxation or how much welfare state we should have, that is all fine, we can discuss these things, but the basic goal should be there. However, the Austrian Freedom Party, just as well as the AfD, they have a kind of conservative wing. This wing in the AfD is very pronounced in Western Germany, and also I think in the Austrian Freedom Party there are people who have to distance themselves and to disavow all the time people who just speak the truth. They are slick opportunists that want to pander to the mainstream. They want to be accepted at the table in the halls of power of the globalists. Apparently they do not want sovereign nations, they just want to be in a privileged position in a globalized world. They want to climb the ladder of the New World Order instead of preventing that New World Order. And these people have constantly disavowed the youth in Germany and in Austria who raise awareness about these problems and in a very peaceful and creative way try to combat this replacement migration that we still have right now, because they see if this goes on, they will not have a future anymore in Europe, and if not in our lifetime, for sure our children and grandchildren will not be able to live a free life as Europeans in Europe anymore. They will be complete slaves of foreign powers by that time. And if you peacefully and democratically struggle and fight to prevent this horrible scenario, then some people in the Freedom Party and in the AfD, they feel the need to disavow you and to distance yourself from you and call you all kinds of dirty names in order to just appease the mainstream media. This is the actual betrayal that I am talking about. Of course, there are many good people in these parties that don't do that. For example, Mr. Kickl, who was the Minister of the Interior in Austria. Mr. Kickl didn't feel the need to apologize for more nationalist, more patriotic people, especially for the youth of Austria in their struggle against replacement. And there are people such as this also in the AfD, of course. Now, as Minister of the Interior, Mr. Kickl was in a position where he could become really dangerous for the left. As Minister of the Interior, he has access to sensitive information and he has access to the deep state. In fact, the Austrian Freedom Party was stretching her fingertips already towards a position where they could fill positions within the state with their own people. As I said, stuff that the other side has been doing for decades right now. And this has to be stopped by all means necessary. The Ibiza video is basically an attempt to stop this, I guess. This is very similar to the reason why Mr. Maaßen in Germany had to be kicked out as the president of the German secret police. Because if you want to oppress political opposition, you must have a head of the secret police who is absolutely loyal to the current regime. And you cannot allow the other side, or at least conservative people, to have access to information. Okay, but what is the situation now? In the polls we can see that, of course, the general trend right now in the Western world, and especially in Europe, is that the Green Party gains in popularity again with the insane media stunt of Greta Thunberg. So the very globalist establishment who created, or at least owns, the world in which we are living with all its problems and all its pollution, are using a child now in order to point the finger at the poor working class family who only tries to pay the rent and to put food on the table still in the last week of the month, and blames them for all the problems we have in the world now. Isn't that ironic? But this is a tangent, something for another video maybe. We can see in the polls that the Freedom Party took a small hit, not too much actually. That is a good sign. They still get around 20% in the polls. So basically the Social Democrat Party and the Freedom Party lost in the polls compared to the last election, and the Green Party and the Conservative Party of Sebastian Kurz, they could gain. Also the party NEOS, which is a free market kind of liberal party, might make it into parliament. There is a 3% minimum hurdle that you have to take in order to make it into parliament, I think. And we will see tonight how it actually turns out. Now, of course, if these polls are somewhat accurate and not complete nonsense, Mr. Kurz will be the next chancellor, the new old chancellor of Austria again. The question is just what kind of a coalition can he forge? Will he go back to this Social Democrat coalition, or will he form a coalition with the Freedom Party again, so a Kahlenberg 2.0, or will he form a coalition with the Greens and NEOS and become more hip and trendy and inner city modern-like? Of course, most people on the right want a continuation of the Freedom Party and the ÖVP's coalition. But that would be without Mr. Strache then. Mr. Hofer is now the head of the Freedom Party, I think, and Mr. Kickl is also still a very prominent member. The net effect would be then that due to the probably weaker performance of the Freedom Party relatively to 2017, they would lose a couple of minister positions, which are very crucial again because then you have direct access to the bureaucracy, and if someone goes into retirement, let's say, or someone has to be promoted, you will be the one who decides who will take their seats in the deep state, in the bureaucracy. Governments can change overnight, but the deep state remains for decades. So just like a piece of metal is still magnetic after the external magnetic field is long gone, it is the same here. The government is voted out of office for decades already, but the bureaucrats that they put in place who share their ideology are still there doing their job and working in their favor. So I will be watching the news now and see how it went in Austria, and then I will catch you guys again later discussing the outcome of the election very soon, I hope. Be safe wherever you are. Servus, Kameraden.